I woke up before my alarm, my chest already tight with that familiar mix of excitement and dread. It was 6:02 a.m. when I crept out of bed, pulling on my dad's old navy polo and a pair of black jeans. My heart was racing because today wasn't just any Saturday. Today I was supposed to help out at Dad's big catering gig for the first time in over a year. I could taste the coffee before even reaching the kitchen, and for a moment I let myself believe this morning might actually go smoothly. By 7:10 a.m., I was parked behind the church hall where Dad had set up rows of folding tables. I hauled a cooler across the concrete and set to work, chopping tomatoes, lining trays with lettuce, wiping down counter edges still sticky from overnight cleaning. The air smelled like vinegar and fresh basil. There was something strangely comforting about the hum of the early crew, Aunt Carla bantering about her new cat, Luis humming an old salsa tune, Dad barking orders but in that steady way he does when he's trying to conceal how proud he is. I slid into an easy rhythm, lifter of pans, hauler of carts, diffuser of tiny kitchen disasters before they blew up, like the time Carla nearly dropped 3 pans of baked ziti onto my foot. At 9:50 a.m., the first guests trickled in, women in pastel dresses, businessmen in pressed shirts, kids tugging at balloon strings. My job was simple: wheel the carts brimming with hors d'oeuvres and set them out on the buffets. Tray after tray of mini quiches, spring rolls, pineapple skewers. I could feel people's eyes on me, some curious, some polite, some downright demanding. "Could you bring more shrimp around?" By noon, I was sweating through my shirt. My legs throbbed. But I did it all with a smile, because on some level it felt good to prove I wasn't just the kid who'd slack off once the paycheck hit. We wrapped at 1:30 p.m. Inventory check? Trash clearing. Folding chairs. By 4:10 p.m., the last folding table was snapped shut. Dad clapped me on the shoulder. "You did great today," he said, as sweat shone on his brow. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. "For you," he smiled. For a split second, time froze. That bill felt heavier than it looked. It was more money than I'd ever held in cash, all mine, tax-free. I slid it into my back pocket and drove home, imagining a new skateboard deck or even just stuffing it into my savings jar. I'd earned every cent. I had proof, 9 solid hours of moving nonstop, of people staring like I was suddenly an adult. For once, I felt like I belonged in their world. It wasn't about the money, it was respect. Then I walked into the kitchen and saw Mom, hands on hips, her face like thunder. She had that look that meant trouble before I even spoke. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice sharp. I reached behind me, casually pulling the bill partway out of my back pocket so she could see. "Dad gave it to me. For helping out at the catering today." Her eyes went wide, then narrowed. $100? That's way too much for flipping trays. You don't need that much money. My chest constricted. "Mom, I was up at 6, worked from 7 to 4. That's 9 hours on my feet." She crossed her arms and leaned in. "You're just a helper, not a full employee. You should give it to me so it isn't wasted." My throat went dry. "What? No way. He gave it to me for my work." Mom scoffed. "You live under my roof. That money should go back into the family pot." The family pot, those 2 words stabbed at something inside me. "I helped feed 500 people today. I think one bill is mine without it being illegal." She stared at me like I'd sprouted wings. Then turned away. "Don't talk back to me," she muttered. I swallowed hard, but my voice came out steady. "I'm not talking back. I'm saying I earned it." She spun around, voice rising. "You're spoiled. Always have been. Taking more than you need, hoarding money. It's stinging." I clenched my fists at my sides. "I'm not stingy. I'm just proud of working for something." Mom's lips thinned. "Proud? You think prancing around with $100 bill is pride? You should be grateful you live here rent-free." I'd heard that line 1,000 times. "I am grateful," I said, though it felt hollow. "But it doesn't mean you get to take everything I earn." Her eyes flared. I will not let you waste that on junk. Give it back. I felt all the warmth drain from my body. Give it back? After I spent all day helping Dad? She stepped close enough that I could smell the faint lemon of her cleaning spray. I said, give it back. There was a moment where all I could hear was my own heartbeat. I could feel the pulse in my neck, my hands shaking. Because what she was asking didn't make any sense, and yet, in our house, it probably would all just end with me giving in until no one raised it again. Fine, I heard myself say, even though every nerve screamed not to. Fine, I'll give it back. She turned on her heel, satisfied. Good. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My earphones were in, playing some random playlist, but I kept hitting skip. That $100 had been mine. I'd swept floors, lifted trays, refilled chafing dishes, carried deadweight carts in and out. And in return, I got guilt-tripped, lectured, and stripped of what I'd rightfully earned. I stared at the glow of my phone as it slipped off the nightstand, landing screen down on the carpet. The next morning, I woke up late. My alarm had died. Mom was in the kitchen, cooking breakfast, pancakes and eggs. She looked at me and said nothing, as though the fight hadn't happened. I tried to eat, but my stomach felt knotted. I picked at a pancake and forced down an egg. I grabbed my backpack, prepared for school. The money was burning a hole in my pocket, or rather, it would have been if it were still there. In a moment of defiance, I'd slipped the bill into my math textbook before bedtime. Mom never checked my textbooks. She was more likely to rifle through my wallet or backpack. But inside that textbook, the cash would be safe. Walking to the bus stop, I felt lighter. I remembered Dad's proud smile when he handed it to me, the way he'd said, "You earned it." For a few blocks, I let myself believe in that moment fully. That I was capable of contributing something real, that I could stand up for what was mine. At school, I slipped into class just as the bell rang. My friend Jenna waved, pulling me into a seat. She leaned in. "You okay? You look like you could sleep for a week." I forced a grin. "Just didn't sleep well." She eyed me. "Did your mom do that money thing again?" My heart thudded in my chest. "Something like that." She gave me a sympathetic look but let it drop. I opened my math book and felt the edges of that crisp bill stacked neatly inside. I drew a little heart on the corner of the page, as if sealing it off from prying eyes. The teacher started writing equations on the board, but I barely saw them. My mind was on the money, on the injustice of it, on the strange mix of pride and shame swirling inside me. After school, I skipped football practice, too tired, too anxious. Instead, I headed straight to the bookstore near campus. Inside, the smell of fresh pages and coffee hit me like a wave. I wandered the aisles, running my fingers along spines until I spotted the exact science textbook I'd been saving up for, plus a new graphic novel I'd had on my wish list. I slid those onto the counter, handed over $45, and watched the cashier hand me my change in crisp 10s and 5s. Holding those bills in my hand, seeing the books in my bag, I felt something like victory. Walking home, I thought about Mom's lecture, Dad's grin, Jenna's concern. I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about having something that was wholly mine, proof that I could do something on my own. And I wasn't about to give that up. I stuffed the rest of the money into my textbook again, and when I got home, Mom was waiting, arms crossed, eyebrows raised. I opened my backpack, pulled out the new books, and set them on the kitchen table. "Bought yourself some school stuff?" she asked, voice flat. I shrugged. "Yeah. I needed them." She stared a moment, then exhaled. "Well, as long as they're useful." I nodded, fighting the urge to say I'd already spent it all. Instead, I just picked up my books and backed out of the kitchen. In the hallway mirror, I caught my own reflection, tired eyes, messy hair, but standing a little straighter. That night, I slipped the rest of the bills, $20 bills and 5s, into an envelope taped inside my textbook cover, where no one would find them. I lay in bed thinking about how freeing it felt to keep what I'd earned, even if it meant lying. And in that moment, I understood something. this wasn't just about $100. It was about my right to make my own choices, to stake a claim on my own life, even in the small things. I didn't know what would happen if Mom or Dad ever found out. But for now, I had my money, and that was enough. I threw my backpack onto the edge of my bed and stared at the ceiling until the early morning sun crept in through the curtains. Head pounding, I realized I'd slept 2 hours later than usual, and by then, Mom was already out the door. The envelope taped inside my textbook was still there, bulging with the 20, 10s, and 5s I'd hidden. My heart gave a little thrill thinking about it, but it was still early, too early to face the kitchen battlefield. I tiptoed downstairs, expecting Mom's glare, but the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I grabbed a peanut butter sandwich, ate it standing at the counter, then snuck back upstairs to dig through my drawer for my sketchbook. Drawing helped me calm down. I flipped to a blank page and loosely sketched the church hall tables, the way the light hit the polished silver trays, the curve of my dad's back as he hefted a propane burner, and the triumphant moment when he pressed that crisp bill into my palm. My pencil skated over the paper, capturing not just shapes, but feelings, the tension in my shoulders, the pride in my chest, the sting of Mom's voice telling me I didn't deserve it. Later that morning, I texted Jenna. "You around? Need escape?" She replied instantly. "Come over." Her house was a short bike ride away. I helmeted up and pedaled through the cool spring air, using the wind to blow my bad mood away. When I arrived, she greeted me at the door with a hug so tight I could feel the beat of her heart. "So," she said, tugging me inside. "Spill." I settled on her couch. Jenna's little brother, Marco, was practicing guitar, screeching out a painfully off-key version of something that wasn't recognizable as any song I knew. I closed my eyes. Jenna handed me a mug of hot chocolate. "Seriously, what's up with your mom and money?" she asked. I told her everything, how I worked for 9 hours, how Dad gave me the bill, how Mom insisted on seizing it like it was a crime, how I hid the rest and lied about spending it. She listened, face scrunched in that fiercely protective way she has when someone's messing with me. "That's awful," she said, stirring her drink. "Your money is your money. Who is she to dictate what you do with it?" I shrugged, twisting the mug's handle. "I know. But I also hate lying. It feels wrong." Jenna put her mug down and looked me in the eyes. "Look, you gotta protect what you earn, period. But maybe you can come up with a way to keep her from knowing exactly how much you have, without straight-up lying." I blinked. "Like what?" She grinned. "A bank account. A teen checking account with a card." I snorted. "Mom would just snoop my statements online." Jenna shrugged. "Better than an envelope in a textbook." I thought about it. The freedom of a debit card, of paying for things without Mom ever seeing cash in my wallet. But like Jenna said, Mom would find the notifications. I could get a prepaid card? Put money on it anonymously? I asked. "Maybe." She tapped her chin. "Or ask Dad to transfer it into a savings account for you? He seems on your side." I hesitated. Dad was more flexible than Mom, but when push came to shove, I didn't know which side he'd choose. The last thing I wanted was to drag him into another family tug-of-war. I thanked Jenna and left by early afternoon, heading back home with a plan forming in my mind. I locked all my textbooks in my desk, shoved the envelope inside the shelf where I stored sketch supplies, and opened my laptop. I searched teen-friendly prepaid debit cards, and found a few options. Cards you could load cash onto at retail kiosks, no bank account needed. I bookmarked the top 2, printed the instructions, and clipped them to my bulletin board. That night, Dad came home from the restaurant late. I found him in the garage, tinkering under his catering truck's hood. "Hey," I said, leaning against the workbench. He looked up, grease on his cheek, and smiled. "Hey, kiddo. What's up?" I took a breath. "Do you know anything about prepaid debit cards?" He wiped his hands. "Sure. You can load them like gift cards." "Why?" I pulled the printout off the board and showed it to him. "I need to keep my money safe." And I don't want to lie to Mom, but she's always snooping my room. He read it over slowly, then nodded. That's smart. Better than hiding cash. My chest filled with relief. Would you help me set it up? Like load it for me? He scratched his head. Yeah, I think I could. But your mom might notice a card in your wallet. I grimaced. True. He leaned closer. Or you could open an actual savings account in your name. Nothing fancy, just your own minor account. I'd co-sign. She won't be able to get at it. I bit my lip. Would that work? Dad shrugged. Banks are strict about privacy. She can't see your balance without logging in with your info. I exhaled, excitement fluttering. Can we do that this weekend? He nodded. Saturday morning, after breakfast, we'll head to the bank. I grinned. Thank you. He ruffled my hair. You earned this money fair and square. I don't want your mom bossing you around. Saturday dawned crystal clear. I wore a clean navy polo, not Dad's old one this time, and jeans without tomato stains. Over breakfast, Mom eyed me. Where are you off to? She asked. I hesitated. Bank. To open a savings account. Her spoon paused midair. A savings account? She repeated. Why? I explained I wanted a safe place for my money and that Dad would co-sign so it stayed mine. Mom chewed thoughtfully, then shrugged. Fine. As long as you promise not to hide things from me. I nodded vigorously. Promise. Her eyes lingered, suspicious, but she said no more. At the bank, the teller smiled at me as if I'd grown up overnight. Dad stood behind me, proud. In 20 minutes, I had my own account and a little debit card attached. It felt official, like stepping fully into adulthood. Dad slipped me $50 and 20s to load it, and I carefully handed them over. The machine beeped, the teller counted, and then slid me the receipt. Balance, $80. On the drive home, I stared at the card in my palm like it was gold. With each highway mile, the tension I'd carried for weeks fell away. I was finally in control of my own money. Back at home, Mom asked for a bank update. I told her my balance. She grunted but didn't press. That evening, around the kitchen table, Dad casually mentioned that I'd be working more events this summer, and that we'd negotiate pay fairly. Mom didn't comment. I smiled inwardly, small victory. Over the next week, I logged into the bank app and watched the $80 sit there, untouched. I set up an alert for deposits and purchases. The freedom was heady. I realized I could buy pizza after a late study session, contribute to a charity I cared about, and never feel gilded or guilty. Then Friday night, Dad pulled me aside. Hey, your mom and I talked, he said softly. My heart lurched. Would she force me to give back the rest? But Dad shook his head. We think you deserve this. Just keep the communication open. You show her that you're responsible. Relief flooded me. I will. Thanks. That weekend I treated myself to a comic convention. I loaded $20 onto my card, bought a cool art print, and felt the thrill of that digital swipe. Later, I texted Mom pictures. Look at this! I wrote, and her response came quickly. Nice. I'm proud of you. I stared at her words, surprised at how much they meant. It wasn't perfect. We still had our arguments, but the money that once threatened to tear us apart had become a bridge. That night, I added a sketch to my book, me, Mom, and Dad around the kitchen table, the three of us bathed in warm light, each holding a piece of that $100 journey. My debit card, Dad's grease-smudged hands, and Mom's hesitant, hopeful smile. The lines were rough, but it captured the moment I claimed my independence, and the moment my family, in their imperfect way, let me. And as I closed my sketchbook, I realized this was only the beginning. I still had a lot to learn about money, trust, and what it means to stand on your own 2 feet. But for the first time, I felt ready. Ready to earn. Ready to keep. Ready to grow. And that felt more valuable than any bill tucked in a textbook. That weekend's comic convention felt like a dream. I rolled through aisles of glittering merch, neon posters, and cosplay outfits so detailed they looked movie-ready. I clutched my prepaid card in one hand and a steaming slice of New York-style pizza in the other. No parental guilt, no cash worries, just the pure thrill of buying something with my own money. When the vendor handed me the slice, I nearly smiled out loud. It tasted even better than I'd imagined. Later, I found a small booth run by a street artist whose work I'd followed online, a series of gritty cityscape sketches that felt oddly familiar, like reflections of my own late-night drives through empty streets. The print I'd eyed online was there in person, $5 cheaper than the store had shown. I swiped my card, felt the machine beep, and watched the artist sign it. To Alex for keeping it real. It hit me then, this was more than art or pizza. It was validation that my choices, small, serious choices, mattered. Riding home, I couldn't stop grinning. Dad checked in. Find anything good? I rattled off my haul and promised to show him later. He sounded genuinely proud, and I tucked that feeling into my pocket alongside the crisp print of the city skyline. Monday morning hit like a brick. Homework piled up, and I could feel Mom's eyes on my phone every time it buzzed with a transaction alert. Yesterday I'd spent €10 on a hot chocolate at break. Today I was fighting the urge to lie about it. But I remembered Dad's advice, honesty builds trust. So when she peeked over my shoulder and asked, €10 for hot chocolate? I nodded. Worth every cent, I said, showing her the app notification. She grunted but didn't pry. During lunch, I noticed a new kid at school, Maya, who'd just transferred from another district. She looked lost by the lockers, backpack dangling off one shoulder. I waved her over. Hey, I'm Alex. Need any help? She smiled shyly and introduced herself. We started talking, about classes, teachers, the best lunchline hacks. When she complained that the cafeteria pizza was practically cardboard, I dug into my backpack and pulled out a foil packet of protein bars, courtesy of my grocery run savings. Here, I offered. They're way better than this stuff. She accepted gratefully, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like my hard-earned money had done more than buy stuff, it had built a connection. That afternoon, I found out I was on the catering schedule again for Father's Day weekend. Dad asked if I wanted to do the full 3-day charity event, or just the 1-day wedding before. I surprised myself by choosing the wedding. 3 days straight was too much, and I wanted to test how well I could balance work, school, and my little independence experiment. He raised an eyebrow but nodded. Smart choice. Back home, Mom dropped a bomb. She'd signed me up for summer jazz band auditions. To keep you out of trouble, she said. My chest tightened. I barely played the guitar well enough to jam with Marco. Jazz band sounded like a nightmare. I hesitated, then gave in. Okay, I said. I'll try. Over the next week, I split my afternoons between pizza slice pop-ins at the convention center and jazz practice in the living room, my mom tapping her foot in corrected rhythms. On Tuesday, Maya texted, Thanks again for the bars. Want to study together after school? I agreed, and suddenly I was juggling 3 new priorities: work, band, and friendship, all funded by my own savings account. By Thursday, I'd spent another 20 on jazz sheet music and another 10 on a Milo's coffee to keep me going through late-night practice. Checking my balance, I realized I was down to €20. Panic rose. My allowance refill wouldn't come until after the catering gig payment. I texted Dad. Need cash advance? He called back. Sure, €10. And hey, keep track of this stuff, okay? I promised I would, and when I met him after school, he slipped the bill into my hand like a secret handshake. That evening, I found Mom in the kitchen, beating chocolate batter for brownies. I took a breath. Mom, I started. She wiped her hands. Yes? I laid out my week, catering choice, summer band, study plans with Maya, all funded through my account. Then I admitted the panic about my low balance. I'm trying to manage this, but it's tricky, I said. Her face softened. Let me see your statements, she offered. My heart thumped. Was I ready? I handed her my phone. She scrolled through the notifications: pizza, prints, coffee, music. Then she stopped on catering payment, €50. She looked up. "You're doing a lot," she said quietly. I nodded. "I know, I want to prove I can." She handed back my phone. "I'm proud," she whispered. "Really?" I blinked, stunned. "Thanks," I said. Friday morning, I met Dad at the church hall again. This time, I carried heavier pans without complaining, refilled trays almost on autopilot, and caught myself thinking through each step: how long I'd be on my feet, what I'd say to Mom later, how much was left in my account. It felt like chess. Every move had consequences. That night, Dad handed me another crisp €100. I nodded gratefully. "Save half," he advised. My throat tickled. "I will," I promised. He clapped me on the back. "Then spend the rest on something you love." Back home, I stood in the hall, wallet bulging, Mom waiting. She eyed the bill. I took a deep breath. "I'm splitting it. 50 to savings, 50 to treat myself." She blinked, reached out, and squeezed my hand. "Fair." My chest warmed, and I realized this $100 fight had turned into something else entirely: a lesson in trust, responsibility, and respect. That night, I updated my sketch: me, standing between Dad and Mom, each hand on my shoulders, the €100 bill gently folded in my front pocket. Above us, a thought bubble: I get to choose. And as I closed the sketchbook, I knew this journey wasn't over. There'd be more work, more money choices, more fights and make-ups. But for the first time, it felt like I was writing my own story, one bill, one decision, one sketch at a time. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through my curtains and the distant hum of traffic below. My stomach rolled with anticipation. Today was the first of the 3-day wedding weekend, and I felt an odd mixture of eagerness and nerves. I dressed quickly, pulling on Dad's old black polo, the one that fit me best now, grabbed a granola bar, and headed downstairs. Mom was at the counter, pouring coffee. She glanced up, caught my eye, and offered a small, genuine smile. It was the first one I'd seen since we'd settled the money fight, and it gave me a little buzz of confidence. At the venue, a sprawling country estate with manicured lawns and a white marquee, Dad was waiting with a stack of aprons. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, cinched mine around my waist, and stepped into the soft morning light. Already, vendors were arranging flowers, photographers were scouting angles, and I could hear the faint chatter of guests arriving. The energy was different from the Father's Day event, more formal, a touch more frantic. I took a deep breath and dove in. My role was back-of-house runner again, fetching plates, restocking trays, clearing space for the newlyweds' cake display. But I added something new. I kept a small notepad in my apron pocket, jotting down timing cues and special requests, like the bride's wish for gluten-free sliders to be served exactly at 6 p.m., or the aunt who needed extra napkins by the cheese board. It was my way of showing I wasn't just muscle, but someone who cared about the details. Every time I caught Dad's eye and saw that proud nod, I felt a flicker of pride. The day blurred into a cycle of tasks: carry this, refill that, pause to hold open a door for an elderly uncle, smile politely at photographers who snapped candids of me hard at work. At 1 p.m., I even got to help plate the couple's lunch, tiny heart-shaped sandwiches with the crusts removed. It felt like art. By 4, my feet were screaming, but I knew I only had one full day left after this. I resolved to pace myself tomorrow. When Dad handed me my €100 at the end of the shift, I surprised him by asking if he could break it into smaller bills. "I'd like a few 5s and 10s, I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Planning ahead?" I smiled. "Yeah. Easier to spend responsibly." He laughed and obliged. As I slid the bills into my wallet, I felt that familiar weight of ownership, but now it was paired with a sense of mastery, like I had the map to this new world of money management. Back home, I decided to treat myself to a celebratory dinner. I loaded €30 onto my card and took the bus downtown. The restaurant was a tiny tapas bar I'd passed 100 times but never dared to go into. I ordered the house special, patatas bravas, chorizo skewers, and a small pitcher of sangria. When the plates arrived, I savored each bite, paying attention to flavors and textures. In that quiet booth, I realized this freedom I'd carved out for myself was about more than spending. It was about choosing experiences, trusting my own judgments. Thursday morning I woke with a dull ache in my legs but an oddly light heart. Jazz band practice was at 5 p.m., so I spent the day at home, helping Mom with laundry and cooking lunch. She asked about the wedding weekend, and I walked her through every detail, the timing, the special requests, how I'd used my notepad. She listened, eyes softening. "You really stepped up," she said. I felt a little glow. "Thanks, Mom. It means a lot coming from you." At practice, the band director praised my progress. "Your timing's improved, Alex. Keep it up." I grinned through my sax solo, thinking of how I'd channeled the same focus into managing my cash. When I left, I stopped by Maya's place. She wanted to show me sketches she'd been working on. We sprawled on her floor with art supplies scattered around, trading doodles and advice. When she asked if I'd chip in for supplies, I didn't hesitate. I transferred €10 to her account on the spot. She smiled, surprised and grateful, and I felt that same warmth I got helping Dad in the kitchen. Friday was the big wedding day. I arrived early, heart pounding as I set up trays of champagne, flutes, and hors d'oeuvres. The ceremony was to start at 3, with cocktail hour at 4:30 and dinner at 6. As I wheeled the last cart out, I caught a glimpse through the open tent flap, the bride walking down the aisle, her smile like sunshine. My chest tightened, not with nerves but with something like awe. I'd played a small part in something beautiful. All afternoon, I buzzed around, making sure servers had enough plates, clearing glasses, refilling buffet dishes. I felt like I was part of a well-oiled machine, one that I'd helped keep running smoothly. At one point, the bride's grandmother pulled me aside and whispered thanks. "You've been such a gentleman," she said, her eyes sparkling. I blushed and nodded, the compliment making me feel older, more capable. When the evening wound down and the last guests drifted away, Dad and I packed up the trucks under a sky heavy with stars. He handed me the final €100 with a simple, "You earned it." I looked at him, my chest swelling, and said, "Thank you, Dad, for everything." On the drive home, I counted the 3 €100 bills in my wallet. €300 for 3 days of hard work, and more importantly, 3 days of growth. I thought of the mornings I'd woken up before sunrise, the nights I'd practiced sax until my lips hurt, the afternoons I'd helped Maya or stuffed my sketchbook with drawings of our kitchen table. Each euro was a milestone. When I stepped in the door, Mom was waiting, arms folded, but not in anger this time. She smiled and said, "I was thinking, maybe we could plan a family outing with some of that money. A weekend trip or something." My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. "Really?" She nodded. "I want to share in what you've built." I swallowed, speechless for once. "I'd love that." That night, I updated my sketchbook one more time, a loose drawing of me, Mom, and Dad sitting by a campfire, marshmallows in hand, the €300 stacked neatly beside us, proof not just of work, but of family, trust, and the unfolding adventure of my life. As I closed the book, I realized that this journey, this story, was far from over. But now, I was writing it with my own hand, every decision a brushstroke on the canvas of my future. By the time Monday rolled around, the house felt different, but in a good way. Mom was actually humming while rinsing dishes, and Dad gave me a nod of approval as I grabbed my lunch. I tucked my debit card into my wallet alongside the 3 crisp €100 notes, knowing exactly how I'd divide them, half into savings, the rest earmarked for the months ahead, books, band music, and the occasional treat. It was the first time I'd ever had a plan for my money that felt both realistic and exciting. At school that morning, Maya caught sight of me in the hallway and waved. "Ready for history class?" she asked. I nodded. As we walked together, I told her about the family trip we were planning, just a simple weekend in the mountains, a chance for us all to unplug. She grinned. Sounds amazing. I wish my family did trips like that. I realized then how lucky I was, not just the money, but the chance to rebuild trust, to prove myself, to show that I could be responsible. History class passed in a blur of Renaissance art and quick notes. During a break, Jenna slid a folded note across the desk. I opened it. Congrats on the money win. Proud of you. She'd drawn a little cartoon of me wearing an apron and holding a bank card. I laughed and scribbled back. Thanks. We're going to the mountains. The rest of the day felt light, like I was floating. That evening, I spread my sketchbook on the kitchen table and began the final drawing of this chapter, me standing at the summit of a mountain pass, arms thrown wide, valleys stretching below. At my side, small sketches of my mom, dad, Jenna, and Maya, each representing the ways they'd supported me on this journey. Next to me was the faint outline of my wallet, card peeking out from its slot. Mom came in and leaned over my shoulder. "What you drawing?" she asked. I turned the book so she could see. When she read the tiny captions, "Family support, true friends, money lessons, my future," she smiled, eyes shining. "It looks hopeful," she said softly. I nodded. "It is. I've learned a lot these past weeks." I closed the sketchbook and met her gaze. "Thank you for trusting me." She reached out and patted my arm. "I'm sorry for pushing so hard before. I see now you needed this." My chest tightened. Apology from Mom was almost as rare as fresh snow in summer. The next weekend, we packed the car with sleeping bags, marshmallows, and Dad's old camping stove. As we drove into the mountains, I watched the city shrink behind us, replaced by pine forests and winding roads. I counted the cost in my head, the money set aside for groceries, gas, permits, but it all felt worth it. That night, we built a campfire under a sky so full of stars it looked like someone scattered glitter across a black canvas. I handed each of them a stick with a plump marshmallow. We toasted them slowly, laughing as they caught fire, then blew them out and sandwiched them between graham crackers. It was simple. It was perfect. Sitting there, holding my own melted marshmallow creation, I realized how much had shifted. I was no longer the kid hiding cash in textbooks, too scared to stand up for myself. I was someone who could work hard, make smart choices, and share the rewards with the people I loved. And that, more than any money I'd ever earned, felt like true wealth. As the fire dwindled to embers, Mom leaned her head on my shoulder. Dad draped an arm around both of us. I looked out at the dark silhouettes of the peaks and felt a surge of gratitude. The road ahead would have its bumps, new events, new conflicts, unexpected twists. But I also knew I had the tools to face them: resilience, honesty, and the quiet pride that comes from knowing you've earned your place. I closed my eyes and breathed in the cool night air. Tomorrow morning, I'd help Dad pack up the campsite, head back home, and step into new adventures, school projects, catering gigs, jazz solos, art deadlines, all underpinned by the lessons of the last few weeks. Every decision, every euro spent or saved, would be a choice I owned. And for the first time, I was excited, not anxious, about what came next. Because now, I wasn't just part of the story. I was writing it.